Behind the Smiles of Mayberry, the untold story of the Andy Griffith Show. Ron Howard may have charmed millions as the gap-toothed kid from Mayberry, but the world beyond those camera lenses told a very different story. While audiences embraced a picture of small-town warmth and neighborly grace, the real atmosphere on set was layered with tension and unspoken resentment. One cast member in particular made life difficult for nearly everyone around them, including a young boy who had no choice but to smile through it all. The show that defined an era. When the Andy Griffith Show debuted on CBS in October 1960, it arrived as something America didn't know it needed, a gentle, unhurried portrait of life in a fictional North Carolina town called Mayberry. Running for 8 seasons and producing nearly 250 episodes, the series became one of the most consistently beloved programs in television history. Its ratings never slipped below the top 10, and in a remarkable achievement shared only by a handful of other series, it closed its final season ranked number 1. The show grew out of a guest appearance on another popular program, where Andy Griffith first introduced Sheriff Andy Taylor, a widowed father navigating small-town law enforcement with patience, humor, and quiet wisdom. Don Knotts brought the bumbling but lovable Deputy Barney Fife to life with comic brilliance. Frances Bayvere portrayed Aunt Bee, the household anchor whose steady presence gave the Taylor family its emotional center. And a young red-headed boy named Ronnie Howard played Opie Taylor, winning hearts across the country with every episode. Behind that warmth, however, ran an undercurrent that few viewers ever suspected. Ron Howard, from Opie to Oscar. Born in Duncan, Oklahoma in March 1954, Ron Howard came from a family already embedded in the entertainment world. By the time he was 5 years old, he had appeared in both film and television. His casting as Opie Taylor launched him into a different category entirely. For 8 full seasons, he appeared alongside Griffith and Knotts, absorbing the craft of performance and developing instincts that would later serve him extraordinarily well, not in front of cameras, but behind them. When the show ended, Howard transitioned into Happy Days, where he played Richie Cunningham alongside Henry Winkler's iconic Fonzie. The chemistry between the two was genuine, and the series became its own cultural touchstone. But even then, Howard was already looking toward directing. His first feature behind the camera came through a deal with a low-budget producer. From there, he built steadily, eventually delivering Splash in 1984 and confirming he belonged in that director's chair for good. By the time A Beautiful Mind arrived in 2001, Howard had become one of Hollywood's most trusted filmmakers. The film dramatized the life of mathematician John Nash, swept major awards, and earned Howard the Academy Award for Best Director. It was the kind of achievement that reframes an entire career, though it also drew criticism for omitting certain complicated truths about its subject, a reminder that telling someone else's story always carries real responsibility. The tension behind Mayberry's white fences. The most discussed off-screen conflict from the Andy Griffith Show involved its 2 central figures, Andy Griffith and Frances Bayvere. On screen, their characters moved through life with easy familiarity. Off-screen, the distance between them was considerable. Bayvere was known among colleagues for her intensely private nature and exacting professional standards. Where Griffith tended toward warmth and approachability between takes, Bayvere kept largely to herself. Directors who worked on the show recalled that even minor requests, small adjustments for camera positioning, could be met with significant resistance. Griffith once made an unannounced visit to her home in an attempt to repair the relationship. The gesture did not land as intended, and the encounter only deepened the wall between them. Years passed. The show ended. Both stars moved on. Then, near the end of her life, as Bayvere faced serious illness, something shifted. She contacted Griffith and expressed what she had never been able to say during their years working together. She acknowledged that the difficulty between them had largely been her own doing, recognized his leadership throughout the production, and gave him credit for much of the show's lasting success. It was a moment of honesty that finally closed a chapter neither had been able to put to rest. Bayvere passed away in 1989 at the age of 86. Griffith also lived to 86, passing quietly at his coastal North Carolina home. Both left behind legacies far richer than their conflict. The castmate young Ron dreaded. For Ron Howard, the most difficult relationship on set was not with Griffith, who he consistently described as a positive and guiding presence, but with Bayvere herself. The warmth Aunt Bee projected toward Opie on screen simply did not extend into their actual interactions. Howard experienced her as distant and emotionally unavailable in a way that made certain scenes genuinely uncomfortable to film. One particularly memorable example involved an episode requiring young Opie to eat multiple servings of Aunt Bee's homemade pickles across numerous takes. Howard had a strong personal aversion to pickles to begin with. Having to consume them repeatedly while working opposite a co-star with whom he shared little genuine warmth made the experience especially unpleasant. Decades later, those who knew the production confirmed what Howard never quite said outright: the two simply never connected. She was not openly cruel, but a persistent chill existed between them that a child on set had no real framework for processing. When old lessons meet new disappointments. Many years later, Howard channeled a similar kind of disillusionment when reflecting on his professional connection to J.D. Vance. Howard had adapted Vance's memoir into a film for a major streaming platform, approaching the project as a story about resilience and the complicated texture of working-class American life. At the time, Vance carried no political profile, and Howard engaged with the material on purely human terms. As Vance's political trajectory evolved in directions Howard found troubling, the filmmaker spoke about the experience in measured but clearly meaningful terms. He did not issue dramatic statements; that has never been his style. But the weight behind his words was unmistakable. The person whose story he had tried to honor had become, in Howard's view, someone he no longer recognized. The parallel to his childhood experience with Mayberry is not accidental. In both cases, Howard encountered the unsettling reality that surface appearances, a comforting character, a compelling personal story, do not always reflect the full truth beneath. Howard's response has never been bitterness. It has been clarity. He has spoken about the importance of thinking critically, examining what we choose to believe, and understanding that the stories shaping public conversation deserve careful scrutiny. For someone who has spent his life understanding how narratives are built and how easily they mislead, that message carries real weight. A love story that needs no script. Away from professional pressures, Howard's personal life tells an entirely different kind of story, one defined not by conflict but by remarkable consistency. He met Cheryl when both were 16 years old. By his own account, he knew early on that she was the person he wanted to build a life alongside. Their first date was modest: a film, a pizza, a mint green Volkswagen Beetle. Years later, Howard joked that both the car and the relationship had held up remarkably well. She did not say yes to marriage immediately. Cheryl took time to consider her own ambitions and the kind of future she wanted to shape before making that commitment. It took 3 proposals before she agreed. They married in the summer of 1975 and over the decades that followed, raised 4 children and navigated the sustained pressures of public life together. Their daughters have spoken about Cheryl as the gravitational center of the family, steady, warm, and grounding in ways that no professional achievement can replicate. Howard has said that what sustains a long marriage is not simply love but the genuine willingness to grow alongside another person, to adapt, and to keep finding common ground even as 2 separate lives continue to evolve. For a milestone anniversary, Howard took Cheryl for a drive in a car identical to the one from their very first date. No formal celebration, no public event, just 2 people revisiting a beginning that had led somewhere truly extraordinary. It is, in many ways, the quietest and most genuine story Ron Howard has ever been part of. And unlike the films, it required no script at all. Which Ron Howard film has left the strongest impression on you? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next video on your screen.